Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another WrestleMania rebooking. Of course, if you're paying attention, last week I did not post a WrestleMania video because we were out celebrating Tabby's birthday, which of course is more important. So, with that being said, today I'm going to grace you with not one, but two WrestleMania rebookings this week to make up for lost time. And we are going to go with it was our birthday last Sunday, so we did no wrestling videos last Sunday. Happy birthday to you.
I turned 27.
Hmm? How was your birthday?
It was actually really good. I got a little bit of the rage out, which was
We
nice.
celebrated at a rage room where you go in, you break shit, just let it all your anger out, and very,
You
very.
broke how many TVs?
I also did it in my back. But
hmm You had it like this. Start out like that. End up like that.
trust me, there was a lot of pent up frustration, and I can tell you that much. So, I'm sure you did as well.
You stood there and just egged me on. But
But if you ever got some pent up frustration, you go, I definitely recommend one of those rage rooms. Just let it out sometimes. Let it out. It helps.
mhm,
Trust me. So, with that being said, yes,
mhm.
actually happened a little while ago. Actually, like went out when you were looking.
Kind of like when you stole a sleeve of my Oreos.
Anyway, so I have no idea what she's talking about. Her Oreo mysteriously disappeared somewhere. Yeah, nobody on here is a witness to anything. You heard nothing, nothing whatsoever.
Oreo thief. Prove it.
As I was saying, so yes, we're gonna do two WrestleMania rebookings this week. Kicking off with WrestleMania 32 from 2016. This is probably one of the most underwhelming and quite long WrestleManias there was. Um, Compared to what the WWE actually wanted to give us. Because if you read some of the online news sites and the rumors going around at that time, there was actually quite a few big matches that they had planned because they wanted this particular WrestleMania to be the biggest one ever. They wanted to break the indoor attendance record that they previously held at WrestleMania 3 all those years ago. I mean, look, some of the matches they had planned, they had Sting versus Bray Wyatt, which is pretty kind of interesting. We were finally going to get Undertaker versus John Cena at WrestleMania. We were going to get a mixed tag team match that was hinted at the year prior. The Rock teaming up with Ronda Rousey against Triple H and Stephanie McMahon. We were also going to get finally get the sealed triple threat match for the WWE title. But then the injury bug happened, and literally half of the roster was pretty much injured at the time. So a lot of big names did not compete at this WrestleMania due to being on the injured list. Obviously, John Cena, uh, Bray Wyatt, Randy Orton, so many of the Seth Rollins, who was the WWE champion, who was supposed to be the WWE champion going to this show. Of course, like I said, so many big names were injured, missed out on the biggest WrestleMania of all time, as they, promoted it as. So they pretty much had to improvise a card with all the, you know, missing names. Of course, this was also the year we saw the debut of AJ Styles at the Royal Rumble a couple months prior, so he made his WrestleMania debut here. So, with unfortunately the matches that we could have got, let's see what the WWE actually concocted and put together for us. Starting off on the pre-show, um, we had Kalisto defending the United States Championship against Ryback, which was really nothing much to it, if I recall. We also had the Dudley Boys going one on one with the Usos, and if I'm not mistaken, the Usos won. I want to say it's been a while since I, seen the pre-show. And then we had a 10 Diva tag match, which was pretty much the cast of Total Divas at the time, taking on the anti divas, you want to call them, which is pretty funny because when they were able to have these total divas tag matches against the other non-total divas, it's pretty funny when you think about it because many of the, even though the teams rotated a lot, many of the women on the non-total divas team ended up actually being on the total divas. So at some point in time, so logic. Then we go on to the main show, which kicked off with my personal favorite, a multi-man ladder match for the Intercontinental title. It was Kevin Owens defending against Dolph Ziggler, The Miz, Sami Zayn, Stardust, Sin Cara, and Zack Ryder. Another match that was hampered by the injury bug because Neville was originally supposed to compete in this match. He injured his ankle, I mean, like a week or two before WrestleMania. So he was actually replaced with Sin Cara and Zack Ryder. Zack Ryder, of course, will go on to shock everybody and win the Intercontinental title. Even though, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure he lost it the next day back to Kevin Owens on Raw the next day. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong. Up next, we had Chris Jericho going one-on-one with AJ Styles. AJ Styles, of course, his WrestleMania debut. Chris Jericho won. Do I think he should have won? Probably not, especially since you want to, um, show this people, show the fans who didn't really know who AJ Styles was, and at the same time, so the longtime AJ Styles fans from his days in TNA, you wanted to show pretty much what he was capable of, and they had him lose his WrestleMania debut to Chris Jericho, which many people probably thought, okay, that's not a good sign for his WWE career. That obviously was not the case because he did go on to win the WWE Championship later on that year, and then a couple of years later, he won it for a second time and held it for over a year, so not too bad. After that, we had a six-man tag team match. It was the New Day against the League of Nations, otherwise known to many people as the League of People that get beat up by Roman Reigns on a weekly basis. It was Sheamus, Rusev, and Alberto Del Rio. Wade Barrett was also on the team, but again, another superstar injured. Um, the heel team, the League of Nations, won, which in hindsight didn't really amount to anything because they all got their asses beat by Stone Cold, Shawn Michaels, and Mick Foley right after. So that really was no point of them even winning the match. I mean, that's just my opinion. Up next, we have the match that I was actually looking really forward to seeing that weekend was Brock Lesnar and Dean Ambrose in a no holds barred street fight, which did not deliver at all. It was like pretty boring and just your standard Brock Lesnar match, since his comeback, except with maybe a couple chair shots here and there. It really wasn't as good as it could have been because supposedly there was, friction between Brock Lesnar and Dean Ambrose, behind the scenes when Dean Ambrose pitched so many ideas, Brock Lesnar didn't want to go through with any of them. So, I wasn't there, so I have no idea what was going on between them two. So it just didn't really click like, we thought it would. So it was pretty underwhelming, which is pretty much the whole theme of this WrestleMania was pretty much underwhelming. Up next was perhaps the match of the night, and it was a triple threat match for the brand new Women's Championship. The Divas title was retired earlier in the evening. The brand new Women's Championship, a triple threat match between Becky Lynch, Sasha Banks, and Charlotte. Of course, all three of these women had just made their debut on the main roster the summer before this, and Sasha Banks immediately became one of my favorites, and it was at this point in time that she was actually really, really becoming one of my top favorites. And it wouldn't be until like later on in the year when they did the whole redraft again, Sasha Banks actually became like my number one favorite. And to this day, even though she's no longer in WWE or even goes by the name of Sasha Banks, in case you don't know, she's in AEW as Mercedes Moné. Still to this day, I still consider her my number one favorite female wrestler. As you can see, I actually met her in Phoenix a couple years back. So, yeah, of course, I wanted her to win the match. She did not. It was won by Charlotte. Becky Lynch was also in this match. She was not one of my favorites at the time, but as the years went on, she actually went on to become one of my top favorites. And currently, as it stands, is actually probably my favorite currently in the company right now.
Unbiased.
I know you are. Who's your favorite?
Rhea.
There you go. Hey,
She's badass.
she is. I give her
She
that.
even won a match on my birthday.
There you go. I mean, I'm a Rio fan. I mean, I fuck with Rio.
She's cool.
Okay.
Did you really just say that?
Anyway, so up next, we had a Hell in a Cell match between Undertaker and a returning Shane McMahon, who had just made his return to the company after being gone since like 2009. Of course, Undertaker was supposed to face John Cena, but he was one of the many, many, many superstars injured during this WrestleMania build-up. So, of course, they had to, again, rearrange people over the place. And this is actually probably like the longest match on the card. It was like over half an hour. Shane McMahon, of course, taking his usual crazy bumps falling off the top of the cell. Of course, the whole reason for their match was actually riddled with all kinds of plot holes about why they were going at it and what would have happened if Shane won. If he lost, it was just like so many plot holes going in. But it delivered for what it was. I mean, so up next, there was the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, which is probably only the second and probably the last Andre Battle Royal to even be on the WrestleMania main show. And it was won by a debuting Baron Corbin. I mean, if anything, they probably should have had this match on the pre-show and moved one of the pre-show matches to the main card first round because this match was pretty much filled with jobbers, pretty much. Probably the only biggest name in the match was literally probably the Big Show, Kane, and to the surprise of everybody, for some odd reason, Shaquille O'Neal was in the match. Yeah, that was totally random. Up next, we had an impromptu match between The Rock and Eric Rowan. The Rock actually came out to announce the um, very, very true attendance record. Of course, we all know it's probably was the actual number, and he was interrupted by the Wyatt family. Of course, Bray Wyatt, another one on the injured list at this time. That led to them about to jump the Rock. John Cena came out, even the odds. Rock and Eric Rowan had an impromptu match that lasted like probably like 6 seconds. So yeah, at least Eric Rowan can say that he fought the Rock at WrestleMania to his grandkids or whatever, you know. And then we had our main event. It was Triple H defending the WWE title against Roman Reigns in what many people probably call the most longest and boring main event in WrestleMania history. I mean, I honestly, I watched this show live on pay-per-view or the network, whatever it was at the time, and I do not remember anything about this match except for the entrance. I don't, except the entrances where Triple H came out with little cosplayers, little Skull Kings.
I would have loved to see when Triple H used to fight.
I did. I've actually have I seen him compete live? Or actually, I've seen him live, but I don't think I've actually seen him in a match live.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen him come out and do like promos, but I never actually. No, no, wait a minute. I did. Duh. When I went to WrestleMania in New Orleans in 2018, I saw his match. At obviously. So yeah, in the end, Roman Reigns won. This is of course when this is of course when they really, really wanted Roman Reigns to be the top face in the company. And this was at the time when the fans did not want Roman to be the top guy. Compare his reaction here until the reaction he gets now, and it is like night and day. Now he has the fans' respect, he has their love, their admiration. But going back 10 years ago, it was a complete story. The crowd, the
He was
fans,
the underdog.
the crowd, they hated him. They were ever booing him every single chance they got.
Yeah, because he was the underdog.
Mm-hmm.
People will hate the underdog for so many years until they realize the underdog's really the goat.
And it's pretty much they they didn't want Roman to be the top guy then because they felt he was being too overpushed. They felt he was being overrated or whatever. But like I said, just a few years later, when he came back from the little layoff he had during the pandemic and he became the tribal chief, and that's when he really took off, and that's when everyone started to appreciate just who Roman Reigns really was. I mean, I've always liked Roman. I've always been a fan of all three members of the Shield. You know, I especially have a lot of respect for Roman, especially for going through what he went through, the same thing that I did. So that respect is even more higher up there. So that's what they gave us for WrestleMania 32. And now we're going to go with how I would have done it. Now, I know I usually say I don't go back and change my cards up, but this is probably the only exception because I actually had two different match cards for this WrestleMania that I booked. When I said the first one, I probably fantasy book made just after the Royal Rumble when AJ Styles made his debut. And the second one I did, I want to say like halfway through the spring, just like a few weeks before he got to WrestleMania. So this is actually the only WrestleMania that I have two separate cards for. And of course, I'm going to give you both of them. For the pre-show, we're going to keep the same match for option A and option B. It's going to be a tag team turmoil match for the tag team championships, which will pretty much feature every tag team that was on the roster at the time. Of course, the champions were the New Day. They had defended against the Usos, the Dudley Boys, the Primetime Players, Goldust and R-Truth, and pretty much every team that was on the roster at the time. So that pre-show is going to stay the same for both option A and option B. Everyone say hello to Dennis. Hello.
Wave, Dennis. Be like, hi, my name's Dennis.
Get those views up. Get those views up.
And I'm shy.
Everybody click on to see Dennis. Yes, he's a very shy compared to his sister, who's very out and about and already digging from
I'm
football.
surprised you're out this far, baby. He's like, you picked me up. Yeah.
Yes, our children have fur. Also,
Someone
less expensive. I know that sounds controversial, but hey, less expensive.
And they actually like me.
Nothing against people with kids, but I'm fine being the cool deal. I'm fine being the deal.
I'm the cool auntie that has cats and tattoos.
So we'll stick with that. We're fine with that. Plus more Lunchables for us. So two kudos to that. So
I get to eat all the childish food.
hey,
And nobody can take it away from me.
I didn't eat your Oreos, I promise. Anyway, going on.
Yes, he did.
We're gonna start with option A, which is
Oreo, Dennis. He's an Oreo thief. He's an Oreo thief. That's why I get things that have fish in it, so he doesn't take it, 'cause he's a food thief. Yeah, I know.
There's a poll for you guys. Did I or did I not steal the Oreo?
Yes, he did.
I would definitely like to hear your thoughts on that. Promise you I did it. Scout's honor. But anyway.
You were never a scout.
Technically, I was in the Boy Scouts in 6th grade. I made a boat, a little mini boat to float in the water. It did not work. It did not work at all.
Technicallys don't count.
It was a little wooden boat, like about this big. I painted it blue. I had this. They told us to paint it blue, and they had a little sail on it. It was supposed to float in the little stream thing. Mine did like Titanic.
Technically, did it break in half before it sunk?
Oh my god! Just know it's probably down there somewhere with the rest of them. You petty. So going on with option A for the first WrestleMania card for this show. We're going to kick things off with, of course, my personal favorite, a multi-man ladder match, but for the United States Championship instead of the Intercontinental. We'll save that for later on. In this match, Kalisto is defending the title against The Miz, Alberto Del Rio, Sheamus, Ryback, Stardust, Dolph Ziggler, and AJ Styles. I think in this match I will give another surprise victory. I'll probably give the win to Sheamus for whatever reason. Up next, we have a one-on-one match between Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. Believe it or not, I think this WrestleMania, along with WrestleMania 27, I actually wrote out in complete detail of like every storyline, how it progressed from where it started until that WrestleMania. I have no idea what the hell I did with it. It was 10 years ago, obviously. But I actually had this WrestleMania, like I did 27, like detail by detail, how to get to each match and everything. And I had Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, of course, as you know, are longtime rivals, longtime best friends. They're destined to do it forever, like the Batman and the Joker. So they would have had their first main roster match at WrestleMania. I would probably give the win to Kevin Owens. Then we would have the Andre the Giant Battle Royal. There's a little cool down match in there. But I would give the win to Mark Henry. You're probably thinking that's random as hell, but they were in Texas that year. Mark Henry, of course, is from Texas, and he was pretty much on his last legs as an active competitor. He would retire, pretty much soon after this. So that would have been like a nice little, thank you victory for him. One last WrestleMania, hurrah! Win the Andre the Giant Battle Royal. Well, not too bad. Then we have the Intercontinental Championship. Dean Ambrose, of course, was feuding face, switching the title back and forth with Kevin Owens at this time. I would keep Dean Ambrose as the Intercontinental Champion, defending against Chris Jericho, who would want to have his own WrestleMania moment and win his 10th Intercontinental title, to try and break his own record. Of course, he would not, and the win would go to Dean Ambrose, who would still be Intercontinental Champion. Up next, we have a no disqualification match between Bray Wyatt and Brock Lesnar, which was actually another match that they actually had planned. Once they found out Sting would not be able to compete, they actually were going to go with Bray Wyatt versus Brock Lesnar. They started building toward it at the Royal Rumble, but then again, Bray Wyatt joined the many list of superstars injured, so Brock Lesnar ended up fighting Dean Ambrose. Do I think this match would have been better? Probably not. But of course, I booked this with the high hopes and high intents, good intentions. Hopefully it would be, a lot better than what we actually did get. And I would probably, as much as I would hate to give another WrestleMania loss to Bray Wyatt, I think I would have to give the win to Brock Lesnar because, of course, he, would only show up around WrestleMania, SummerSlam time. So there'll be no point in, Brock Lesnar beating Bray Wyatt. Disappears in the summer. Bray Wyatt, of course, can build himself back up because he was able to do that, rest his soul. Up next, we would have had a fatal four-way for the Divas Championship. Now you say, okay, the Divas title was retired. Why are you still referring to that? Of course, again, because I booked this before they changed the title, before they retired the Divas Championship. So that's what I have. I'm going with that. Of course, I don't predict the future. I didn't know they were going to change the title. So we're going to go with the Divas title. Obviously, a fatal four-way. Pretty much the same match, except we're adding Paige to the match. So, of course, Charlotte is the defending champion in this case. So it'll be Charlotte, Paige, Becky Lynch, and Sasha Banks. As much as Paige was probably my top favorite at the time, this is when the bias starts coming in, and I probably would have given the win to Sasha Banks because, yes, now we're getting to that point where I'm going to be a lot more biased towards some of my favorites, especially the women's superstars. You'll see when we get there, especially when we get to WrestleMania 39 you'll see when we get there because, yeah, you're going to really see some bias in that one. Up next, we would have the first ever WrestleMania match between two legends who have faced so many times but have never faced each other at WrestleMania. The Rock versus The Undertaker. In this timeline, The Rock is announced as the host of WrestleMania. And, comes out, does his promos to get people hyped. When he decides to say that he's done it all in WWE except for one thing, and that is beat The Undertaker at WrestleMania. That will lead to Undertaker coming out. Rock challenges Taker to try and get that one last accolade that he doesn't have in his collection. Of course, Undertaker defeats The Rock at WrestleMania. We finally get these two legends going one-on-one at WrestleMania for the very first time. And then in our main event, we have the WWE title, Triple H against Roman Reigns. There was really no other viable option for Triple H to defend the title against. So we're still sticking with Roman Reigns because it's pretty much obvious where they were going with that. So, yeah, of course, Roman will get the win back because Triple H was pretty much part-time at this point. So that was the first option. Now we're going to go with option B, which is what I booked maybe like a few weeks before WrestleMania, like halfway through the show, in the build. And I honestly don't even remember why I switched some of it up, but like I said, this is the only WrestleMania where I did two separate cards. So some stuff might seem similar, some stuff just little tweaks here and there. So of course I said the pre-show stays the same, tag team turmoil for the tag team titles. This main card, we're still going to open up with the multi-man ladder match for the United States Championship with a couple of differences. It's still Kalisto still defending against The Miz, Alberto Del Rio, Sheamus, Stardust, Dolph Ziggler. But instead of AJ Styles, we're replacing him with Chris Jericho. And instead of Ryback, we're replacing him with Rusev. And in this timeline, I think I would give the win to The Miz because I think this is around the time when he was getting ready to pretty much rejuvenate the Intercontinental title at this time. He brought it back to some of its former glory when he was, Intercontinental Champion. Up next, I would have the cool down match, the Andre the Giant Battle Royal. I would give the win to Sami Zayn. He winning his first WrestleMania, Andre the Giant Battle Royal, because I really didn't have anywhere else for him to put him at this point. The next match would have been an 8-man tag team match, the Wyatt family versus Ryback, Kane, The Big Show, and Mark Henry. I think it was at this time Bray Wyatt actually had a mini feud with these individuals. I think they had like a 6-man tag at Fastlane the month prior where he was going against the Titans or whatever he was calling them. So it was a good way to blow off that feud here. But I think I would give the win to the Wyatt family because 3 of the guys on the other team are like way past their prime anyways. So there's really no point of them giving the win. So, and then up next, I would have the Intercontinental title. This time, Kevin Owens is champion, defending against AJ Styles, who, like I said, of course, just made his WWE debut a couple months prior. And what better way to make his WrestleMania debut than by challenging for one of the top titles in the company against one of his best workers in Kevin Owens. And of course, I would give the win to AJ Styles. For what better way to win your debut WrestleMania?
You're supposed to tell them the plan for the.
Well, I'm telling you how I would have done it.
Oh.
Oh.
But when you do stuff like that, like for them, they plan literally everything out. It's such bad acting. But they plan out who wins and who loses.
They do.
And they don't tell you.
This is that. Is I tell how I would have done it. Or I would have made it on. He's actually took acting classes, and now it's not difficult, but it's now watching movies. Now he has to.
It's difficult for me to watch movies.
Because he has to criticize their acting now.
It's very difficult to watch movies. Because I'm like, dude, that was bad.
Great acting.
Kind of like my teacher, how she said she can't even watch TV anymore.
Now, whenever I hear monologues, I think about you.
Why?
Because that's what you're taking in your class, monologues all the time. Or that, or not monologues. Improv. Whenever I see.
I'm good at improv.
Whenever I find out, like, there was a scene in the movie that was improvised, I like to tell you because she was working out improvisation. Of course,
It's easy.
Yeah, she has her online classes.
And I'm already like, what's the word people use these days? Unhinged. I'm already unhinged, so improv is really easy for me.
It was pretty cool. I listened because she had them virtually online, so I was listening to some of it. It was actually pretty neat. I ain't gonna lie, I was kind of didn't want to do it myself, but for another time.
Yeah, like when we find out who the Oreo thief is.
And then we move on to the next match, which would have been. We'll keep the same fatal 4-way for the Divas title that I kept in the previous one. Charlotte, Paige, Becky, and Sasha. Of course, they're giving the win to Sasha. Up next would have been a no-holds-barred match between Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns. Now, Roman's not in the title picture, so who is? We'll get to that right now. Of course, this match will come about because these two technically had unfinished business from WrestleMania the year prior, where nobody actually won between either one because Seth Rollins cashed in his Money in the Bank contract. So, of course, these two will sell their business 1 year later in a no-holds-barred match. Of course, this was when their feud was still fresh. Not like unlike now, we've seen Brock and Roman Reigns probably face it maybe 100 times already at 4 different WrestleManias. So it was technically still fresh at this point. Up next is the WWE title between Triple H defending against Dean Ambrose. Now you're probably thinking, so that's the main event? Actually, no, it's not. It's not the main event because think about it for a second. You really think WWE would have wanted nothing against him because I love Dean Ambrose, but do you think WWE would want Dean Ambrose to main event WrestleMania? I mean, you have to think of it logically too. I mean, kind of like how they did Rock versus Hulk Hogan, which should have been the main event, but they had it 2 matches before. Sometimes there is a match that has more importance or more significance than the WWE title to main event, like Rock versus John Cena, or Hulk Hogan versus Psycho Sid for some odd reason. Bam Bam Bigelow versus Lawrence Taylor, again for some unknown reason. Undertaker and Roman Reigns. I mean, should it have main event at WrestleMania? Probably not. Should it have even took place at WrestleMania? No, but we'll get to that one in a bit because we're gonna do that WrestleMania next. So
don't give them ideas, damn.
Oh, it's too late for that one. So of course I would give, as much as I would love to give Dean Ambrose the win, I probably would have had Triple H retain, and then now you know what, I would have Dean Ambrose get the surprise WrestleMania win, and then have a little mini feud with Roman Reigns right after. But the main event in this time for this card would have been The Rock and Undertaker, pretty much the match I had in the first option, except this time it's going to be in the main event. So just switched up. Undertaker gets the win, of course, and that's that. Oh, second here. So yeah, so that's how I would have done WrestleMania 32. We'll get to the other, ask you how I did in a few, because now we're gonna do WrestleMania 33 instead of making up for not being here last week. But again, we were doing Tabby's birthday, which is more important, obviously. So we're now on to our second WrestleMania for this week, WrestleMania 33. It's one of those like in the middle type of WrestleManias that's just is there. It's not the best, it's not the worst. It's really good, but I like this WrestleMania a lot. It has like a special place to me because it was during the time when they had the second WWE draft, and SmackDown around this time was like probably the best show at the time. It was like a whole different ballgame. I wish we could go back to this era, but unfortunately we can't. Um, the also, like I said before, outdoor WrestleMania just hit different. Any outdoor show just hits different, especially when it comes to WrestleMania. And of course, as you saw, the entranceway for this WrestleMania was definitely probably the best entranceway that they've ever done. I mean, if you haven't seen it, Google it. If you have, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And that entranceway was simply amazing. And I love the theme song, even though I do not listen to Pitbull at all. But I did love the theme song they did for the show.
Who that is?
He's I don't know if he's Cuban, Puerto Rican, or something like. I know he's a Latino or something like that.
He's something.
Something along those lines. I'm Latino. I'm Latino myself, and I don't even know what the hell he is. But anyway, but I did like the song that he did with Flow Rider, and I forgot what the other guy's name was. Funny thing behind that story. I mean, that story, that song. Pitbull performed that song, the theme song for WrestleMania Greenlight at the show, and he had Flow Rider and the other guy. I can't remember what his name was. The other artist come on, they sing together. The other guy was a little heavy set kind of fellow. And I remember my friend watching with me. For some reason he thought that was Flow Rider, and he's like, "Damn, Flow Rider really let himself go." I'm like, "That is not Flow Rider. That's the other guy that we're seeing." Yeah, I forgot what his name was. If you know what it is, you can feel free to let me know.
I don't even think they're the same ethnicity though.
Ooh.
Florida and whoever that one guy was.
Oh, that I know. But I want to say he's like, I honestly don't know what the hell Pitbull is. Like I said, I don't listen to him. I just liked that one song they did for WrestleMania. But yeah, I personally like this WrestleMania. I think the only thing that really upset me about it the most was that this was when it was still on the WWE Network, and or was it on Peacock? I honestly don't even remember. But for whatever reason,
dirty.
Hey, but for whatever reason, my stream kept freezing and freezing and freezing, and I was getting so frustrated. And my friends were laughing at me because for some reason people think it's funny when I get mad. I don't know why, but it is.
It's funny.
Why do people think it's funny when I get mad? I have no idea.
Funny.
I have no idea why. So I'm over here frustrated because the stream keeps freezing. I had to keep resetting and resetting it. My friends are over here laughing at me because they found it hysterical that I was getting mad. F you, Mike. I know you're probably watching this, but yeah. So going on to WrestleMania 33. Again, I really like this WrestleMania. It holds a special place because of the time period. Like I said, this was a very good time for WWE at the time. Like I said, I wish they could go back to this era, but a lot of people actually feel the same way. They wish they can go back to this certain, era of WWE. Unfortunately, we cannot. We cannot go back 10 years in time.
Wait, why not?
Trust me, I wish we could.
I want to write myself a list of people to ignore.
I did the exact same thing. Trust me. So going on to WrestleMania 33, kicking off on the pre-show, we had the Cruiserweight title, Neville defending against Austin Aries. I really thought Austin Aries would have won, but they gave the win to Neville. And I kind of feel really bad for these guys because I know it was a shitty move because they actually, from what I recall, they actually left this match off the DVD for whatever reason. So obviously they're rightfully pissed. I have no idea why, but they did not include that match on the actual DVD for this show, and I can completely understand the frustration. I probably would have been pissed too, but I'm not in charge of that. So after that, we had another Andre the Giant Battle Royal, which was won by, of all people, Mojo Rawley. I don't know why. Not they really didn't do anything with him at the time. This is pretty much now when the Andre Battle Royal was pretty much becoming nothing but jobbers, pretty much, and maybe one or two big names that didn't really have a match. I know Sami Zayn was in the match, Braun Strowman. They're probably some of the biggest names in that match, and they gave the win to Mojo Rawley because he was friends with Rob Gronkowski.
As you depended on who you knew, not your success.
Yeah, they wanted to have Rob Gronkowski be a part of it. He lasted for like not even a year, but hey, do what you got to do. And then we had the Intercontinental title, Dean Ambrose versus Baron Corbin, defending against Baron Corbin, which Dean Ambrose won. I think Baron Corbin would have won because he defeated Dean Ambrose like the following SmackDown anyway, but it was like non-title. And funny story is that this match was supposed to be on the main card, and there was another match that was supposed to be on the pre-show. We'll get to that later. But there was the fans, I guess they were upset about it, so they ended up switching this match with the one that was supposed to be on the pre-show. And we'll get to that in a few. So going on towards the main show, you had the New Day as the host. And like I said, that entranceway in the daylight was amazing. Seeing it at night, that was even better. And I think since I've been to a WrestleMania already, one of my next goals is to go to an outdoor WrestleMania. That is like one of my other goals right there. And speaking of which, supposedly they are building a new arena in Whiting, Indiana, which is actually probably like 10 minutes from my legit like 10 minutes from my house. And they're going to have a new stadium for the Chicago Bears to play in. And if all goes well, that could be the...
They're not Chicago Bears anymore.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they're going to be in Indiana.
Traitors!
And if that's the case, that new stadium, and like I said, Whiting's just right here literally down the street from my house, Indiana. And that stadium could play host to a future WrestleMania for us, which I would definitely go. Because we haven't had WrestleMania here in 20 years at the Allstate Arena, but now they love to have WrestleMania at huge stadiums. Allstate Arena is perfect for like Monday Night Raw and SmackDown, but it's not really the big stadium they want for WrestleMania. The closest thing we have is Soldier Field, where the Chicago Bears currently play. It's an outdoor stadium, but Chicago weather during WrestleMania season is usually not the best because
weather at any given time does not.
Yes, because it's been going to be 80 degrees all this week. Last week it was like cold. So yeah.
It's Chicago.
Yeah, so an outdoor arena in the middle of spring where you usually have WrestleMania in Chicago will probably not be a good idea. I mean, it sucks, but it'd be perfect for something like SummerSlam to have because, obviously summertime. But we'll see what happens once they get that whole thing set up. But it's been 20 years. Chicago needs another WrestleMania. So we're going on with the main show. Kicking off, we had Shane McMahon going on one-on-one with AJ Styles, which a match that pretty much exceeded everybody's expectations pretty much. Shane McMahon, AJ Styles got the win, of course. He was upset because he didn't have a match at WrestleMania. This is when Shane was the general manager of SmackDown. So, yeah. Up next, we had the United States title. Chris Jericho defending against Kevin Owens. And, again, they were upset because if you were watching at this time, Kevin Owens was the Universal Champion. And it was so obvious he could have had a feud with that title for Chris Jericho. But they took the title off him, gave it to Goldberg, and they moved Kevin Owens and Chris Jericho down the card. And like I said it before, sometimes the most obvious choice is the best one to do. And of course, they did not go with it. And both men were rightfully upset. This was also Chris Jericho's last WrestleMania as well. He will leave a couple months later, come back next year for the Royal Rumble, and after that, he hasn't been back in WWE since. I don't blame him. I'll probably be pissed off too if I had one of the hottest stories in the company at the time. and then just got relegated to nothing pretty much. So up next, we had a fatal four-way elimination match for the Raw Women's Championship. It was Bayley defending against Nia Jax, Sasha Banks, and Charlotte. Bayley won, retaining her title. She had just won the title from Charlotte a few weeks prior, and if me personally, I would have had, if that was the case, I would have had Bayley win the title at WrestleMania instead of on Raw. Because, there's your WrestleMania moment right there. And again, I'll say it again. Sometimes the most obvious choice is the best one to do. And of course they did not, because I think it was around this time when they didn't want Charlotte was like on a pay-per-view winning streak where she hasn't lost or nothing, so something like that. But it's yeah. Up next, we had my personal favorite multi-man ladder match for the Raw Tag Team titles. It was Gallows and Anderson defending against Enzo and Big Cass and Sheamus and Cesaro, aka The Bar. It was originally a triple threat match, but during that beginning of the match, the New Day as the host came out and announced that it would be a fourth team added to the match. Me personally, I thought it was going to be the New Day because they should have been in the match anyway. But instead, it was the returning Hardy Boys, and they got one of the biggest pops of the night. So they came, they won the tag team titles, went on a little nostalgic run. Everything. It was good to see the Hardy Boys back in WWE. It was good to hear that interesting music playing on the big WrestleMania stage once again. And yeah. Up next, we had The Miz and Maurice versus John Cena and Nikki Bella. Of course, it's funny to say.
This is annoying.
He's actually one of my favorites. I ain't gonna lie.
I think he's annoying as fuck.
And Maurice has always been one of my favorites. Some people probably have to say that going back, this is probably an awkward.
It's just like.
No, but let me tell you why though. People probably thinking going back and watching this show might see it as pretty awkward now when you think about it, because of course at the time John Cena and Nikki Bella were dating. They won the match, and then after the match, John Cena proposed to Nikki Bella. Of course, that was the WrestleMania moment right there. He proposed to Nikki Bella. They obviously did not get married. Nikki wanted to have kids. John Cena doesn't, amongst other things. They split up. Now John Cena's married to somebody else. Nikki Bella has her kids with her partner that she's no longer with. But so yeah, I'm pretty sure in hindsight is probably maybe a little bit awkward. We'll go back and see that now. But I know they're grown men. Grown men and women. I'm sure they've gotten past that already. But from a fan's perspective, they might be like, yeah, it didn't work out the way they planned it. But like I said, we don't know what the future holds. So I'm cursed they didn't know what was going to happen. A year or two from down the line. But,
I'm fucking psychic.
What's the next match then? We're all looking.
I don't care.
Up next, we had a non-sanctioned match between Triple H and Seth Rollins. This was from the whole thing when Triple H pretty much turned on Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins was, came back from injury to go after Triple H. Of course, Seth Rollins won. Of course, probably another way too long match, but hey, what can you do? Up next, we had the WWE title between Bray Wyatt defending against Randy Orton. And a lot of people consider it to be the worst match of the night, because if you saw the match, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They had like projections of bugs and stuff on the mat and everything for whatever reason, maybe because Bray Wyatt's supposed to be scary. But yeah, this was after.
Bugs aren't scary.
I guess they thought it was. This was when Randy Orton had joined the Wyatt family. It was actually one of the best stories going on SmackDown at the time, but the blow off to it was like pretty much let down, pretty much because the match just didn't work at all. So. And then up next, we had the Universal Championship. Goldberg defending against Brock Lesnar. As I said earlier, they took the title off Kevin Owens to give to Goldberg so he can give it to Lesnar. I mean, did they really need the title for this match? Probably not. I mean, I'm sure they could have done well without it, but we'll get to that when I rebook this WrestleMania. But and this was obviously 10 times better than the match they had at WrestleMania 20 back in 2004. This was like a complete 180 from that. Like, of course it was like spamming finishes, spears, F5s over the place, but it was pretty much a 5-star classic compared to the match they had at WrestleMania 20. So Brock Lesnar won and would go on to hold that Universal title for like a little well over a year or so before finally dropping it to Roman Reigns the next year. Up next, we had the match that was supposed to be on the pre-show, but the fans boycotted it, and it ended up going on to the main show. It was Alexa Bliss defending the SmackDown Women's Championship. Of course, Alexa Bliss was one of my favorites, and still is. Defending the title against the SmackDown Women's Division, which was at the time Becky Lynch, Carmella, Naomi, Natalia, and Mickie James. And the match was won by Naomi. Um, if I recall, Naomi had actually beat Alexa Bliss for the title at the Elimination Chamber, but had to relinquish it back to her because she was injured. The injury wasn't as bad as I thought it was, so they pretty much had like a last minute 6-pack challenge at WrestleMania, which is why they probably added it to the pre-show. But the fans were starting to appreciate women's wrestling more, so they pressured them into moving it to the main card. Of course, they obviously put it in the death spot, which is like right before the main event, which brings us to that main event: Undertaker and Roman Reigns. Terrible match because Roman Reigns, Undertaker, damn near concussed themselves. It was not a good match. I remember being at the Monday Night Raw right at the day after Fastlane, and I remember when this match was set up because I was there live. Roman Reigns was in the middle of a feud with Braun Strowman. Braun Strowman called out Roman Reigns at the end of the show, and instead the Undertaker came out. Everybody was going crazy, losing their minds. And then Roman came out, and they pretty much set in stone their match for WrestleMania. Of course, the actual match was a huge, huge letdown. Roman Reigns won. Undertaker retired, left his hat and his gloves in the ring, and we thought that'd be the end of it. Of course, it wasn't because he was not happy with how his last match went, so he came out of retirement for a couple more matches. Um, yeah. Because again, this was still in the middle of the period where the fans hated Roman Reigns. They did not want him.
Yeah, he was the underdog.
The next night on Raw, I remember watching it. They were like booing the hell. They did not even let him speak a word. They were just booing him and booing him and booing him. And I personally think if Undertaker was going to lose the streak, this would have been the time to lose it to Roman Reigns, not to Brock Lesnar a couple years prior. If he was going to lose to Roman, this should have been the match to end of the streak. And I can guarantee you, if that was the case, the crowd really would have hated Roman Reigns at that time.
Who cares? They love him now.
It's crazy how time works. So
Time is relative. It technically does not exist, but it dictates everything we do.
Mm-hmm. So now going on to how I would have booked this WrestleMania. This one, I want to say I probably did maybe mid-January, February when I actually, because now we're doing these in real time, when I was actually booking these the year that WrestleMania came out instead of going back and doing it, later. So going with the pre-show, we're gonna have the Andre the Giant Battle Royal, but I would give the win not to Mojo Rawley. I'll probably give the win to Sami Zayn because he's the biggest name that's pretty much not on my WrestleMania card. So I would give the win to Sami for that one. Up next, we would have had a 6-pack challenge from the SmackDown Women's Division: Naomi, Natalia, Carmella, Maurice, Becky Lynch, and Mickie James. A 6-pack challenge where the winner of this match would become the number one contender to the SmackDown Women's Championship. Now you're wondering where that SmackDown Women's title is. We'll get to that in a few. And then the main event of the pre-show would have been the Cruiserweight title between Neville and Austin Aries. Unfortunately, it's not making it to the main show again, but at least this time, hopefully, it won't be left off the DVD. So going on to the main card, we're going to kick things off with my personal favorite, a multi-man ladder match for the Intercontinental title. Of course, SmackDown was just really, really good at this time, and it felt like they had a good tag team scene, a good women's scene and everything. So I would go with Dean Ambrose defending against The Miz, Baron Corbin, Dolph Ziggler, Kalisto, Apollo Crews, and Luke Harper, who was on a pretty good roll at the time. He was in the middle of the whole Bray Wyatt and Randy Orton thing. I thought they were going to add him to that match, but they didn't. So I'll stick him in this ladder match here, and I'm going to give the win to Dean Ambrose, let him retain the title in a good SmackDown ladder match. Up next is the SmackDown Women's Championship. Two of my personal favorites. I would have Alexa Bliss defending the title against Nikki Bella. Of course, like I said, I love them both, but if I had to pick one, I think I would go with Nikki Bella winning the SmackDown Women's title. Of course, I think this is around the time where she messed up her neck, so she really wasn't doing too much. Up next, we have Braun Strowman versus Roman Reigns. Yes, Roman Reigns is not facing Undertaker in the main event in this timeline. Instead, he has the feud that was going on with Braun Strowman. They blow it off here at WrestleMania instead. So up next, we're gonna go with the same